Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm very happy to do so. The concept of a Green New Deal is one that has gained more recognition and debate around the world in recent months, particularly with the work of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the US, sparking wider discussion both within and beyond the Democratic Party in the USA. But it didn't begin, this concept of a Green New Deal didn't begin there. In fact, the New Economics Foundation, as far back as 2008, put together the Green New Deal group, including my own colleague Caroline Lucas, as well as respected individuals like Anne Pettifor and many others. And their report was a response to the financial crash at that time. Far, far more than just a green jobs strategy. An economic agenda which included re-regulation of finance, addressing issues around debt and stimulus, corporate tax avoidance, and a heavy emphasis on human well-being and quality employment. That work has informed our own in the Scottish Green Party, from our Jobs in the New Economy report to discussion papers produced by the Green Yes campaign on issues such as the necessity for a post-oil future for Scotland's energy system. I'd like to thank the many people who took part in our roundtable event yesterday here in Parliament, not just MSPs from a number of different political parties, but also campaigners, researchers, and those from the public and private sectors as well. And it was clear from that discussion that there is an appetite for an ambitious approach to applying the Green New Deal agenda in Scotland. One of our NGO guests said we clearly need a new approach, an approach that has to be accompanied by a massive acceleration to see the scale of change we need across every sector. One of the renewable industry representatives said we need something that can build investor confidence and also leverage investment. We need to know the policies supporting renewables will be there decades down the line. And another said the industry is only capable of making evolutionary steps. Radical steps won't be taken by industry. And that comment was echoed by a range of people around the room who recognised the need for an emphasis for the role of government, including institutions like the Scottish National Investment Bank, because markets and competition alone won't achieve the transformation that's needed. The Green New Deal is not a single list of prescriptive policies. It comes under a set of key principles. Creating the conditions for private investment, yes, but also mobilising the power of the state through regulation, fiscal and monetary powers, and public and community ownership to address the ecological and social crises that we face in a coherent way, and building an economy that's fair, sustainable and fit for the 21st century. Taken together with the concept of a just transition, I think this offers a clear platform, not only to achieve the radical and rapid economic transformation that's needed, but to ensure that it works for everybody. Now, this concept will apply differently in different contexts. The situations in the US, the UK and Scotland are different. Existing programmes like universal health care, which that many in the Democrats are arguing for as part of a US Green New Deal, are already in place here. The federal and state relationships in the US are different from the relationships between Scotland, the UK and the EU, the balance of regulatory powers in the different jurisdictions. In Scotland, we would need to act within our current limits, as well as seeking to overcome those limits, as we discussed earlier this afternoon. But we also have a high level of public support for climate action and for social justice, and we have an abundant renewable resource. Those are conditions that should allow us to act. I want to look at the amendments that have been brought forward for our motion. I have to acknowledge that there are merits to the Scottish Government amendment in part, but in other parts it does clearly weaken aspects of our motion, especially on amendments that we believe are necessary to the Scottish National Investment Bank bill. Given the need for clarity and consistency to achieve long-term investment, how could Parliament have confidence in this agenda remaining central to the bank's objects and missions, except by setting it out clearly on the face of the bill? All ministers sometimes behave as though their own political priorities will persist forever. But ministers and governments do change, and new ones are often tempted to create change for its own sake to make their mark. Now, we are not impressed by the Scottish Government's amendment, but if they can give us, in their speeches, a very clear and explicit commitment to the kind of amendments to the Scottish National Investment Bank Bill that will put this core purpose onto the face of the legislation to ensure that it can't be removed at the whim of any future government, then we'll listen to what they have to say. But I do regret that their amendment cuts that principle out of the motion. Labour's amendment makes some similar arguments about that long-term statutory nature of the decisions we should be making in relation to the Just Transition Commission, placing it on a statutory footing to give it the long-term role that it needs. We'll support that amendment, although I have to say that we have a concern that we need to not downplay the current value of the jobs in the green economy. I recognise that the report presented to the STUC recently has an important contribution to make to the debate. But there are, and it should be acknowledged, even within that report, a recognition that there are more than 46,000 jobs, direct and indirect, already in the low-carbon and renewable energy industries in Scotland. There have also been missed opportunities to do more, and I acknowledge that. But we should take care not to feed the narrative that is promoted by the anti-wind and climate denial movements. The potential is real if we have the political will to commit to it. And even more clearly, the alternative to this agenda, business as usual, is simply non-viable. We will obviously oppose the Conservative amendment, not only for what it deletes, but for their continued attachment to the idea that everlasting economic growth is the way to achieve either a sustainable economy or a fair, just and equal society. Let's be clear. The right-wing agenda of growth-obsessed free market capitalism is what has brought about the multiple social, ecological and economic crises. The ideas which have brought us to this point cannot be expected to offer the solutions that are necessary to the problems that they've created. Presiding Officer, we're in a moment of recognition, I think, of the scale of change that's needed, not just in deploying new, greener technologies like renewables, but the need to reject the idea that our current economy can continue while individuals are told to make different consumer choices. Individual choices matter, but if we make those choices within the context of the economic status quo, with corporations given a free pass to keep extracting and hoarding wealth, and governments prioritising immediate growth over long-term survival, we will fail. The Greens are not willing to watch that failure, and increasingly the wider public isn't willing to watch that failure either. We put forward the concept of a Green New Deal and encourage all parties to embrace that opportunity positively, and I move the motion in my name.